Happy Friday, and thanks for sticking through the entire week with us here at the Rocketeer Minute, where each and every day, Monday through Friday, we go over 1 minute of the greatest adventure movie Walt Disney's ever made, the 1991 Joe Johnston-directed feature, The Rocketeer. I'm one of your hosts, Jim O'Kane of TVDads.com.
And I'm Hal Bryan, an airplane nerd from the Experimental Aircraft Association here in Oshkosh, Wisconsin. Now, Jim, we've got a guest today. We've got a special guest. This is Ethan McKinley. According to one of his bios, he's more than just a dyslexic savant genius, which is good because we ask that at a minimum of any of our guests. But he's creator and co-host of a number of shows, Questionable and in our Minute family, the 2 Minute Terminator. And before we started, he was just telling us about a new podcast where he started as a guest and now he's a host called Was It Worth It? So, Ethan, welcome aboard.
Oh, thanks for having me, Hal. And Jim, it's nice to talk to you again. We, of course, did Airport Minute, I think, about 8 months ago. Now I'm back at another aerial-based podcast. One of my favourite films, also The Rocketeer. So, yeah, thank you so much for having me. But special guest, you're overstretching the mark there. Billy Campbell's a special guest. I'm merely a guest. Unless special is in terms of special needs, then I'm absolutely right for that.
Well, you were the special guest of Was It Worth It? So that you were basically the Billy Campbell of that show. You slowly moved in and became a frequent contributor. So I'm glad that's
well, at least I can
out.
say I've worked on a project that the wonderful, famous Billy Campbell has worked on now. So There we go.
Well,
exactly. It's all about degrees of separation.
Yeah, you're just a phone call away from Billy. So, but we're in the midst of we're in the midst of difficult productions by Brits. Watching Tim Dalton here fighting his way out of the plywood in the middle of the movie within the movie, The Laughing Bandit. And we've got many things to talk about. I don't know. While we're on the subject of Dalton, we just lost Roger Moore, one of the best Bonds. I was wondering where does Timothy Dalton fit in your pantheon of Bond heroes?
I don't know, because I think Lazenby is kind of the forgotten Bond, and there's actually a documentary about him coming out. I think it's on Hulu in a couple of months, actually. But I saw both License to Kill and Living Daylights. Sorry, the first one was first, and the last one was, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I really liked him, and I think looking back over recent history, people tended, until Daniel Craig came along, we're going to kind of go, oh, he got it wrong, and he was terrible, and he was this and this. I don't think he was favoured or well received by the American audiences, and I think I'm wondering if he thinks, looking back now, if he's slightly vindicated, because Daniel Craig has gone down that route and been obviously lionized and applauded for that kind of portrayal of Bond, and maybe it just wasn't the right time, because he went obviously back to basics and back to that kind of Ian Fleming Bond, who was a bit of a swine and a sadist and perhaps not the most nicest of characters to women. And I don't know, I think many of the Bond books end with him at the end of his rope almost dying, and he's almost like a slightly tragic character in a way, very much isolated and alone. I don't think Connery portrayed that Bond, and I don't think my favourite, actually, sadly, we lost, was it last week or this week, Roger Moore. I think the best Bond is actually Michael Bolton? Dalton.
I would watch that, yes.
Sorry, I'm looking at Tim Dalton's hair in this clip, and it's distracted me.
He's very lush.
But yeah, no, Roger was my favourite Bond, but I think in terms of like Ian Fleming's Bond, Timothy Dalton and I guess Daniel Craig are the closest to that. But I think, sadly, because he only got 2 films, he was overlooked. I don't think they got rid of him either. I think there was a planned third film, but I think it just took so long in development, because I think Kevin McClory reared his ugly head again and was kind of like locked in a lawsuit with the Broccoli's. So kind of Dalton just kind of went, oh, I'm kind of done. And
that's right. There was going to be one more round of telling the Thunderball story for a third time.
Yeah,
which,
I don't know.
We didn't really need to do.
Yeah, it was going to be called Whipping the Dead Horse.
Yes, exactly.
All I know it was going to be.
Oh, go ahead.
No, sorry. All I know is it was going to be set in China. It was due to come out in like between 91 and 2003, and they just never kind of made it happen. And then there was that kind of like obviously long period. And he obviously replaced Pierce Brosnan, who at the time I guess everyone wanted to be Bond then. But then Remington Steele got their contract renewed, and I think on the day that Pierce Brosnan was about to walk out onto the stage to be announced as the Bond to the world, obviously he was renewed for his Remington Steele contract, and then that was the end of him. And then Dalton, who they'd approached, I think actually in 1969 when Lazenby played it, but he thought he was too young. He was in The Lion in Winter, if anyone remembers that film, from 1969. Yep. I guess they kept tabs on Dalton, but because he'd turned down Bond, I think, twice, he was kind of, I guess, seen as the reluctant Bond, so people knew he didn't kind of want to be Bond. And then, obviously, when Pierce Brosnan fell through, they went back to Dalton, offered him a bunch of money, and he did it. And even though he did a great job, I think, I guess there was that stink still attached to him. Sorry, I listened to a bunch of recent Bond podcasts with the passing of Roger Moore, so I sound like I know what I'm talking about.
No,
but
good.
I'm just reeling off what I've heard. But no, I think he was great. He kind of he did a fantastic job, and I think perhaps he channels much of that when he plays Neville Sinclair in The Rocketeer. But obviously a much darker version of that, and Errol Flynn, of course, mixed in, which I guess this scene is very much aping, because is the set.
Yeah, it's
I guess a homage to Robin Hood, is it? The staircase?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, that big cylindrical staircase that they're both fighting down, and it's almost, it's not quite scene for scene, but yeah, pretty much the same deal. And he does bear a remarkable resemblance to, like that kind of an Errol Flynn character. That he seems like a likable guy. When he's being a good guy, he seems to be a very good guy. He seems like a movie star whenever he's, in this early part of the film, when you're not.
Well, you guys mentioned, I guess, earlier on the earlier episodes that obviously you did Prince Baron, which is even more of an Errol Flynn kind of. Actually, in the tights, no less, for much of the film. So. Yeah,
and it just, I can't help but love the guy. He's just such an acting guy. He really knows how to exude the whole walking the boards kind of Shakespearean looking fellow, and it's just he never seems to be out of the spotlight. He's always performing.
What did you guys think of him as Bond? Straight back at you.
I loved him as Bond. I thought he was great, especially Living Daylights. He was less of like you were saying, he's the back to the basics kind of Bond. He worked on his on Her Majesty's Secret Service, and that was his job. And he would try to be as emotionless as possible when he's dealing with people, and nothing really fazed him. He was a competent guy. He got frustrated with the bureaucracy. I mean, I think the way that he played that was excellent, and it wasn't. I mean, there were he had humorous parts in the thing, but generally it was a lot more straight, more of a procedural spy movie, if that could be classed as that. But it just.
I think it was too much of a jarring change as well, because everyone was kind of had Roger Moore for 7 films, for crying out loud, since '73. So I think they're very much stuck with that kind of image of Bond, and then Dalton comes along with, I guess, as close to the book version at that point, and I guess everyone kind of didn't like it. What did you think, Hal?
Well, and that's always been kind of the standard for me. I mean, as a kid, I grew up seeing, Connery films in sort of second release, and then some of the Moore films in theaters and things. And I can always find something to enjoy about any of the movies, maybe except for Moonraker, but that's a story for another day, and no disrespect to the late Sir Roger Moore. But for me, the standard is, does this feel to me like the Bond of the books? Because it's, sort of preposterous as the novels are, they're still played very, very straight. And and so I was thrilled when Dalton came along. I think that movie came out, I was about 16 or so. Loved seeing a good, after sort of the smirking of View to a Kill, coming to a good, solid, honest, straightforward, I can believe this guy is Bond.
Yeah.
And I used to judge License to Kill a lot more harshly. I mean, as soon as I found out, and this could be apocryphal, but I'd always heard that the original title for License to Kill was going to be License Revoked.
Yeah, that's
And then
right.
they said, well, no, an American isn't going to know what the word revoked means. And so we've got to change it to License to Kill. And to me, that's sort of almost in microcosm. In my mind, I imagine them making that decision and then making 1,000 other smaller decisions about setting the tone of the movie and everything else. And there's pieces of License to Kill that I think are exceptional for Dalton, but then the tone gets very uneven. There's sort of lots of sort of lighter moments, given all the terrible things that have happened. A few too many sort of the glib one-liners and things like that.
I think it's very much more of a. It's not really. Doesn't feel like a British spy film. Either it's got Michael Kamen doing the music, of course, he did like Lethal Weapon and Die Hard. I think the color palette's very like pastel-y because of, I guess, that Miami Vice look. It doesn't feel like a Bond adventure. It feels much more like an American film, and I think that's one of the reasons that perhaps American audiences rejected it as well, because it didn't do as well as the previous one. So,
that's an excellent point. And I do find that if I'm just, if I'm sort of taking off my critical hat and I just want to have fun with the movies, anyone in the pantheon, with a handful of exceptions, I do tend to lean toward the European settings more. Somehow that seems more appropriate, more exotic. I think we saw more of that in Living Daylights than we did in License to Kill, as you pointed out. License to Kill could have been, it couldn't have been Lethal Weapon. It wasn't quite that funny, but it could have been some, as you said, a very American action film.
Yeah.
Well, as much as we love him in Bond, let's talk a little bit about him in the Rocketeer here.
I'm sorry, the Rock of who?
Yeah.
Yes, I remember this movie.
We're watching the movie within the movie where Clifford has knocked over the flat and has Neville makes a joke about it never failing to bring down the house and stuff like that, and he obviously has the admiration and the fellowship of the staff there. They believe the front story of Neville Sinclair being America's number 3 box office smash, and he seems to be a right guy. But apparently he does have a bit of a nasty side, as his co-star in this, the one that was surprised that he was Sir Reginald, has been stabbed by Neville.
Jim, super quick, right before we get to that, and I hate to derail us, but Dalton as Sinclair is still sort of under the flat. This is another one of those scenes where it's fun to sort of scrub through it right around second 7, second 8. He's looking around. He looks completely disoriented and like he's really been thrown off by this. Then they help him up, and then as soon as he gets to his feet, or as he's coming up to his feet, he realizes, I've got an audience. I'm still on. I've got to flash that winning smile and make my joke about bringing down the house. And it's exactly what you'd expect. And frankly, probably any of us, if you dropped a wall on us, we might be a little shaken up at first. But
well, he kind of screams at that guy privately when the kind of eyes are off him, so he kind of hides that, I guess, that annoyance and that hidden darkness, doesn't he, until he knows no one's watching, and then he kind of gets Jenny fired.
Yeah.
And then
exactly. Yeah. But then, Jim, as you were saying, then we find out that Charlie's been stabbed. And, I have to say, I feel like I'm just wildly ignorant, but I've never quite grasped what this scene really does for us, because we're not to believe that Dalton somehow stabbed him on purpose.
Well, I don't know if we're not supposed to believe that. He seems to have a dark edge to them, and he's vengeful and vicious. And I think this kind of gives us a discordant note early on with our relationship with him. We've already seen him hold a sword to a point of a sword to the base of Paul Sorvino's chin. So
True.
He does seem to have a bloodthirsty side, and maybe this may be an additional. He always gets payback.
Maybe there was just a bit of aggression. He got carried away or something. But
can I ask? Sorry, sorry, Hal. I was going to say, can I ask? Is this kind of at all based in any kind of rumor or fact that certain Hollywood stars in I know the 50s had its kind of McCarthyist era, but were any kind of like stars or Errol Flynn at the time, or any of his ilk connected to this kind of? Because it's a great idea that you've got like a double agent working in like the high society and I guess the entertainment business who's very influential and wealthy. Is that based on any kind of rumor that the writers kind of plucked from to add to this character?
We've had in the past, we've discussed Errol Flynn, one of his more fabulous biographers whose name escapes me at the moment, but in the 80s, this fellow wrote a story about how Errol Flynn was a fifth columnist and was actually promoting Nazi sentiments in immediately pre-war Hollywood, and that he was actually working for the Nazis. There has never been any kind of a basis for that other than this guy's book, and he also had rather elongated stories about other celebrities, so it would be a tendency to doubt the biographers. But that was always been the subtext with Errol Flynn, that he had.
Because I guess Flynn has all those kind of things, like there's a lot of kind of rumor and darkness attached to Errol Flynn. He's a bit of I suppose a car crash type person.
Yeah.
He was connected to kind of like picking up underage girls, apparently with David Niven from the local schools in LA, and kind of heavy drinking and drug use and, endless partying and stuff. So, it's hard to know what was the real him and what wasn't, because there's just so much kind of like wild man antics attached to Errol Flynn.
Yeah, which I mean I would think would be.
He's like the rock star of his day almost.
Yeah, but the problem with it is trying to pin him as being this is a front for being a Nazi spy. I don't think the Nazis would have trusted him with getting a job done given his background.
Because he was like a drunk and a lounge lizard.
He's just
bit of a predator.
Yeah,
but no Nazi. I mean, come on, we draw the line somewhere, right?
Yeah,
sure. We'll date the 16-year-old girls, but Nazis.
Yeah, so I would think that it's, but overlaying it on this, it matches perfectly in the Rocketeer that if you have Nazi spy rings and flying commandos, the works, this is what you need for that movie, and he's an ideal character to bring that out. The idea that like he's shutting this guy up and showing how magnanimous he is with use my own car, take him to Queen of Angels, and have him worked on by my best doctors. This all sounds wonderful, except he's the one that stabbed him in the first place. So it's like this is what he probably gets sued for if he didn't do that. So and he's
did they have lawyers in 1938?
Were they that litigious back then?
Yeah, I would. Yeah, well, you could ask Errol Flynn about litigious problems. Yeah, I mean, there was that between that and the Coogan laws and all the other kind of stuff. The actors were getting sued and suing other people all the time back then. So he's definitely trying to be a nice guy once again playing to the audience around him, but frankly he's just stabbed the guy and he kind of owes him for what the damages he's inflicted. I mean, they're gonna obviously the show's gonna have to shut down because the co-star has been stabbed. So it's.
I was gonna say the Hollywood system. Then Billy talked about this. I think was it the last couple of episodes he was on about that. Was it that hangout, that kind of cafe where young starlets and people trying to get picked up as...
Schwab's,
Schwab's, that was it.
Yes.
Yeah. Was it easy to kind of become an actress back then? I guess maybe there was less... I mean, did you start off like Jenny is here as a kind of extra, then you become a featured extra, or hopefully like a Neville Sinclair will sweep you off your feet and take you to the premiere of King Kong?
Yeah, but
look at the stems on that dame, see? Would it have been easy back then? I don't know.
Who's the American here? I'm rather lost.
Yeah, I mean,
it's Fay.
But for every Jenny, there was a Black Dahlia. You have to remember that side of it. It's like this was and it still is that way. People going to Hollywood going to be a star, going to be discovered somewhere. Although Schwab's is closed. There were a lot of promises made, and instead of going to Hollywood, they wound up in Van Nuys doing porno pictures, and that was another. It's something that isn't. It's never going to come up in a Disney movie, but there were so many horrible ends for starlets in this age and still today.
I was going to say, guys, if you've not seen it, or any of the listeners, there's a 2012 documentary called, I think it's Sunset Strip, and it's literally about the era of kind of Sunset Strip, and then the early building of Hollywood, and then kind of all the gangsters that came along, and then like the stars mingling with them, and then the Rat Pack era and stuff, and the Chateau Marmont Hotel. It actually mentions, it does quite a long piece on Schwab's.
Interesting. Sunset
about
Strip.
Kind of the scene there.
I'll have to check that out. But yeah, it's. I mean, there's so much. The Hollywood Babylon idea really was that way. There were. There was
fresh meat for the grinder, as it were.
Exactly, yeah. So, just go down to the Greyhound bus depot and watch the new starlets coming in. It's not unlike I think if you've ever seen the Steve Martin movie Bowfinger, that there are people showing up and hoping that they can find out who's the next person in charge of doing casting.
Yeah.
But the Rocketeer, it's being more of a fun romp. They don't kind of focus on that, and we see, instead we're watching Jenny and Irma trying to figure out how they're going to be, how they can get in front of Myrna Loy and not have to hold that bowl of grapes anymore.
Exactly. It's about career frustration, not about sort of ending up murdered or other horrible things.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. But we
go. I was going to say, connect the King of the Rocket Men series, which would have been happening when the Rocketeer, if it was a real thing in the 1930s and 40s. The King of the Rocket Men and I think its sequel, of course, was it Commando Cody?
Yeah, that was
right,
a little bit later though. I think that's post-war. I think it was like 49 through in the early 50s.
And then Zombies of the Stratosphere was in there as well.
Yeah,
that's it. I think there's a third series, isn't there? In this, was that inspired? Did that inspire the Rocketeer comic?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Commando Cody and all that. I mean, if you look, all you have to do is look at the helmet. I think they made it different enough that they wouldn't get sued by whoever owns the intellectual property of Republic Pictures. But it's pretty darn close.
Tristan Coffin, who played, I guess, the first Rocket Man, and then George Wallace, who played Commando Cody. Wallace, I think, died on my notes. He died in 1990. Would he have kind of been involved or connected in any way to the production? Or George Wallace, who died in 2005, were they cameos or at all? Because I know, I think the original Jimmy Olsen and the Lois Lane in Superman 1978.
And Kirk Allen. Kirk Allen, the original Superman, plays Lois Lane's dad from the 1940 series. But I haven't heard of anybody from any of those Republic serials. I don't think anybody's in this particular movie. Although if there is, I'd be very interested in finding out about that.
Yeah, that's a good one to dig into.
Yeah.
I just think it's terribly sad that this has been kind of overlooked. And as you said in previous episodes, that Disney has kind of not given it the royal treatment on home video. Many of the other kind of action adventure films have been given like double disc Blu-rays with these feature-length documentaries. And I think, I said this before we went on air, Hal, that Billy's involved. You can hear the enthusiasm and this kind of like want to kind of like, I guess, tell his side of the Rocketeer story, as it's obviously one of the highlights of his career. And I think it's been good that he's come on, because I guess you're jogging each other's memories, both you, the host, and him, of all these little anecdotes that happened on the set. And it's just a shame that this can't be made from a ground-up feature-length documentary with Joe Johnston, all the kind of the star players, as we've seen with like the Alien films or Indiana Jones.
I get the feeling, and I am not basing this on anybody's direct, comments or anything like that, but just the general mood that I get from talking with people who have worked on this series. And Billy hasn't said anything like this, but I get the feeling that Joe Johnston and Walt Disney Pictures did not get along together at all. This was back, this is that era of Waking Sleeping Beauty. They had just finished Little Mermaid was out, Beauty and the Beast was coming up, and Aladdin. So,
well, they weren't the Disney they are today. I mean, you've said that on previous episodes. I think if the Rocketeer came out now, they'd have the branding and the success of all the things they've made so far, like the Marvel films and the kind of Star Wars films now. I think the Rocketeer will be a slam dunk. People will go and see it purely because obviously it was Disney.
Yeah.
I think Beauty and the Beast has just passed 500 million, the kind of the live action remake.
Yeah,
it's very sad, I think. And also I think the studio executives of then that wouldn't have got on allegedly with Joe Johnston will all have kind of perhaps moved on to other studios and or retired. The kids that grew up with this are now working at that studio. So I think it's right to be brought back in a sense. Not the remake, but like a retrospective, if you will.
I would love to see more. And I'm sure there must be something in their archives. Disney, if nothing, is a museum of everything that they've ever done. So somewhere in some file cabinet somewhere, they must have lots of the production artwork, the dailies, the screen tests, all that kind of stuff. And even if they can't get, I don't know how Joe Johnston feels. I wish we could have him on, but it's maybe before the end of this series. Joe,
it's not over yet, Jim.
Yeah, Joe will be kind enough to come out and talk with us about these things. But being able to chat with him about how things were, obviously the tension was there. I think they were getting story notes every day about maybe change this, change that, and not be the Rocketeer that this thing became.
Because technically he's worked for Disney by doing Captain America, which I guess Disney owned Marvel.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. But
that was very successful and spawned 2 sequels, so they kind of have him to thank for kind of... And they also, I guess, got him back for that kind of aesthetic because of the Rocketeer. It has to be the reason he kind of got the Captain America job, because of this film. They wanted that kind of Indiana Jones feel, and I think that's what this film was meant to do, fill in that gap when the Indiana Jones series had finished. This, I think, even more than The Mummy and the kind of things that have tried to get that feeling, this is the closest thing they got, even now, I think, to that kind of swashbuckling, daring do that the Indiana Jones series had. It's just a shame it didn't get a trilogy. It's tragic, really. I think the Black Hole seems to get more shimmy shine than the Rocketeer.
Yeah, you get a Black Hole, and you'll get like 3 discs inside their equipment, and
a whole making of Vincent or something. So that little vacuum cleaner that
which they are remaking, I understand.
Yeah,
with the Tron Legacy director.
Interesting.
Well, we'll see how that turns out.
Well, and of course, at this point, we don't really know anything about this alleged sort of sequel / reboot, The Rocketeers, other than we've heard 6 years in the future and a young female lead.
Yeah, I've just read a young black female lead, but that sounds exactly like what they've done with Iron Man, like this new run of Iron Man comics. They've got rid of Tony Stark, and it's like a young teen black girl playing it. But that just sounds like I think a reporter's probably overzealously added that to this Rocketeer story that I'm reading on the Hollywood Reporter. I don't know.
That's a good point. That could only have, or that may only have come from one source, and it's just been circulated enough. We think it might be valid. I mean, we'll know when we know. Yeah. We'll know when we're invited as special guests to the premiere, right, Jim?
Yes, we'll be
obviously.
We'll be working.
Billy will get you in there.
Yeah, he'll get us on the red carpet. We can chat with him, and he'll say, "Not now, boys. I'm famous." So.
Yes. Damn it, Billy. We knew you when.
We can look forward to it. It can't if they could get Joe Johnson back, who I don't know if he'd ever want to touch another one of these things, but I would love to see a Joe Johnson renovation of the Rocketeer franchise and turn it into an actual franchise. That would be just a nice thing.
Absolutely.
And also, I think set in the 30s, because I'm reading it on this same article that they want to do it like kind of a modern day twist. But I think I don't know. There's a lot to be mined out of this era. It's quite magical, that kind of that golden era of Hollywood and the Nazis and stuff. It's kind of it's got. Well, I mean, as we saw in Captain America, even though they didn't call the Nazis, they used Hydra, but it's such kind of an evocative and mythical, I guess, time of world lore and culture, especially for these like action adventure type films as a backdrop.
One of the things I've always wondered about is why not a Rocketeer animated series? And I could see a Rocketeer series easily generated from this, and they could, it doesn't cost any more to draw.
Build interest that way.
Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, it's all a mystery. It's again, it's like this very minute. It's just a lot of Hollywood, and you never know what's going on behind the scenes.
I was going to say, one thing I love about this scene is when we actually just missed it from the last minute, when that kind of partition falls down. Billy Campbell just staring agog, and then he kind of, in this scene, kind of embarrassedly, kind of sheepishly, I'm turning to Sean Connery, back on Bond, sheepishly slinks away.
No sheepish slinking, sleep. I guess that works. That's excellent. And speaking of scenes, I don't know what it is about it, but I absolutely love Charlie's line when he's laying on the ground, and that whole "Did you think I was stealing the scene?" He's just chewing on every word of it. And he may not have been stealing that scene, but he's stealing this one.
Yeah. Well, my favorite bit in this entire thing is the third or fourth second where Jenny Connelly does as Jenny Blake. She does all of her acting with her eyeballs, and she is just burning holes in Clifford. It's like, why don't we go over this one? But it's just that hole in 1 second. It's just she's looking through him and then out into Nevada from where just
straight through his skull.
Just the laser beams.
A great facial expression that I hope they didn't have to do too many takes, because he really would have been burned to the ground by that. But yeah, all in all, a wonderful scene.
What do you think about this coming kind of? Because I don't know, they're kind of trying to recreate the Universal, this kind of like new monsters universe, starting again with the Mummy with Tom Cruise, which looks very kind of strange tone this summer.
To me, it's...
I don't know why that gets kind of like rebooted over and over again, and again, to come back to the Rocketeer, why this can't have a kind of another shot, as it were.
My major guess on it would be... I'm sorry, let me let you go, Hal. Go ahead.
No, go.
Okay.
I was just... You first. After you, indubitably.
Okay,
go, Jim, go.
Thank you. My belief on this thing is that Universal Studios owns those properties, and I think it's the same production people that are interested in finding out where can we mine things, and they're like, oh, we own the Mummy, we own Frankenstein, we own Dracula, let's go redo that. They don't have to pay anybody new. If they look at the Rocketeer, they've got the estate of Dave Stevens. They've got is it Dark Horse Comics? I can't remember who has this comic series, but they have to pay the comic book company.
Yeah, so IDW has been publishing stuff lately.
Yeah,
but yeah, hard to say who owns the comic likeness.
Because Joe Johnson, strangely as a link, did The Wolfman in 2010, which I think was really good considering what it was. And I think the Universal monsters are these kind of like tragic characters, of these one-off things, almost Shakespearean, if you will.
Right.
And to kind of have them all working together in these planned sequels as kind of a team-up X-Men type thing, it just doesn't seem to work.
Yeah, sort of the Legion of Doom, I guess.
Yeah. And Bram Stoker and Mary Shelley don't have lawyers. That's that's where it boils down
it's
to.
public domain stuff.
Yeah, public domain.
Yeah,
and
because I think the same. Oh, sorry, Hal. Carry on.
Oh, I was just going to say, for me, there'll never be a scarier Universal monster than the original creature from the Black Lagoon,
which I think Guillermo del Toro is trying to make.
Yeah, and it's sort of half interesting to me, but we had sort of the whole Mummy reboot, which wasn't necessarily part of this Universal Monsters thing. We had the Brendan Fraser films and all of that. And now, as Jim said, we're rebooting something just because we can, because they own the property. But I remember I saw an original Creature from the Black Lagoon costume and mask, and even just in the display case, it still just scared me to death. And of course, that's just because I saw it as a kid and everything else. But what do they really need to do? Why not make something new that people will be talking about forever? Except for the Rocketeer, we need more of that.
Yeah, Ethan, did you see the Rocketeer when it first came out?
I didn't, and I'm not sure why it passed me by, because I saw everything kind of. I mean, this is kind of as I started going to the movies on my own, really, and this would have been really in my wheelhouse. I saw the trailers. I'm just not sure why I didn't see it. I actually saw it many, many years later. I think in the early 2000s. It was like, oh my god, how did I miss this? This is like the closest thing we've got to Indiana Jones, and the effects for the most part still hold up. The story's great. The score, I think, is you couldn't have asked for anything better. It elevates the film to an even higher level. It's one of James Horner's best scores as well.
Sure. Yeah.
I don't know. I really don't.
You're waiting 2 weeks for your lifelong.
I'm part of the problem. I'm one of the reasons it didn't do as well.
Yeah, you were out there watching the Terminator, and that kind of changed your whole life.
I didn't go out to vote.
Yeah. But fortunately on your side, you're one of the few people I've known who have completed a series, at least so far, of doing all the Terminator movies. And
I'm a completist psychopath, though. Don't do that. Because I was going, do Airport 77, Jim. That's the one I really like.
We'll get to that one.
We're getting there. We're there before I close the
lid.
lid.
79, the Concorde.
Yeah. I think Terminator 2 kind of crushed everything that year, though, didn't it? That was the other thing. I think Schwarzenegger was at the pinnacle of his career.
Yeah.
Cameron was kind of becoming this kind of behemoth director after The Abyss had failed. I don't know how he got the money to kind of do this, which I think was the most expensive film at the time. It's $105 million, I think, for the budget for Terminator 2.
Yeah.
And it just literally crushed everything. I think the teaser trailer, that famous trailer where Arnie gets the skeleton goes into the flesh regeneration machine and it presses it together and Arnie comes out and it says, "I'll be back." That actually cost more than the first Terminator film.
Wow.
Completely. So yeah, I think that was the summer of Terminator. But how far apart were these in release?
2 weeks after the Rocketeer came out, the Terminator 2 came out, and the week before Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves came out, and then the week after Terminator was City Slickers. So those were three.
That was another giant film as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, and just these guys were just steamrollered. There was no, and the marketing. I think what really killed the Rocketeer was the marketing. You look at the poster, and there's this Art Deco Rocketeer guy who it doesn't appeal to anybody.
It's abstract.
Yeah, it's very. You don't know what the movie's about. It's still very much a teaser. It says Walt Disney Pictures in large letters. So you figure, it's going to be like Iron Giant or something. It's probably animated. And there was no audience for it. There was no, you didn't have. It wasn't targeted at anybody that would be interested in this movie unless you had read, that small fraction of the population that had read the graphic novel. They basically John Cartered the whole thing.
Such a shame.
I don't know. I think that's a bad comparison because John Carter was marketed up the wazoo, and that still didn't do very well. But I don't know. Sometimes some things just don't pan out. But I mean, seeing the Rocketeer later, I just couldn't believe it. And everyone I know that's seen it or I've shown it to has gone, "Oh my god, this is fantastic."
Yeah.
So I mean, the proof is in the pudding. It was just awful bad luck that this happened, because this would have been. I still think the new Indiana Jones, they could make this again now and set it in the 30s.
Indiana Jones is a property of Lucasfilms, and the Rocketeer, the original movie, and probably most of the rights to it is still a property of Walt Disney. So why not have a Rocketeer Indiana Jones team up? I mean, would it really
There you go.
Would it really be that bad?
After Crystal Skull, I wouldn't want them to tarnish the poor Rocketeer.
Well, there is.
And condemn it to another 30 years before a remake because everyone hated it.
I can't bring up the name of the artist right now. I can find it and we can share a link or something. But at the Chicago Comic-Con last year, I picked up this wonderful thing. It was this beautifully done, late 30s style movie poster, big widescreen thing with sort of these multiple heroes fighting it out, fighting the bad guys and everything. And it was Indiana Jones, the Rocketeer, and Captain America.
Wow.
And of course, it's obviously just this fanciful what if thing, but I just look at this piece and say, I will go and see that movie every day of my life. And so.
Maybe they could add him to the Marvel universe.
What's that?
Yeah.
You're right, Hal. I mean, that sounds like a great idea. Why not kind of seed the Rocketeer into the Marvel universe and get him in the back door that way, kind of, as it were?
It depends on how IDW would feel about it. But yeah, that's. The other part of it, I remember seeing someone had done a poster, and I don't know where it is. It was the Rocketeer, Indiana Jones, the Phantom, and the Shadow.
That sounds like the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
Yeah, just about. Yeah, Lamont Cranston and Clifford. I can see that easily.
I can see that too.
So that's a shared universe that could actually work versus the Universal Monsters thing.
Yeah, but
we just have to quietly recast Howard Hughes as Howard Stark.
Wow.
Exactly.
Is all we really have to do. Well, I feel like we've really accomplished something here, gentlemen.
Okay. Yeah.
I have one more question for you, Hal, before we sign off, actually. Oh, God, I keep cutting you off. You're a pilot as well, right?
I am indeed.
Have you, because I'm a UFO nut, have you ever seen anything strange in the sky? Because I posted on the Bulldog Cafe Rocketeer Minute fans that it's come to light that Kurt Russell was the only civilian pilot to actually call in the Phoenix Lights, I think, in 2009.
I just saw that post. That was absolutely fascinating to me.
Yeah.
And, I will go on record as saying that I dearly wish that I had, because I am absolutely fascinated by the topic. A couple of careers ago, I was in law enforcement for a while, but aviation's been a thing my entire life, and I think there's some combination of I love a good mystery, and I'm fascinated by anything and everything that flies. And while I've never spotted anything that I couldn't sort of figure out and explain, the stories to me are fascinating. Now, when you have a convention and suddenly everybody's wearing foil hats and painting their faces green and saying that I'm a regular visitor from Reticulon Zeta or something like that, you start to lose me.
Yeah.
But when you show me the Phoenix Lights, even though I feel fairly strongly that I think we know that those are flares, but whatever. Anytime a story like that comes up, that looks intriguing to me, I am all over it.
Well, I think because it's that area, if it is actually something, it's most likely, which I think 99% of things that are seen are usually these special projects that have right Patterson Air Force Base or kind of
right,
Area 51 or
Area
S4,
51 and all that. Yeah, Area 51 that they only in our sort of at least adult lifetimes have they actually acknowledged really exists. So.
But I think the technology the public has access to is a bit like that. Because I asked Jim before we started the show, I also posted a video of this kind of like hoverboard disc that someone was flying and asked if it was real, and apparently it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, the flyboard sort of thing.
Yeah. It's very exciting stuff.
Yeah, it absolutely is.
And you said there was a Rocketeer or rocket pack being made, Jim, is that correct?
Yes, that's
a real life one.
That is correct. We're going to be having someone on who, or we may have already had them on. I can't remember now. It's We time travel on this show a lot, and actually we're going to.
So we do have we've invented time machines.
We are going to be talking more about it in 2 weeks. 2 weeks we're going to have someone on who has developed a real the equivalent of a Rocketeer pack. But I don't want to give too much away here. But yes, we'll be talking a lot about that, and it is a real thing. I mean, people, if Flying Commandos the works is pretty much that. It's an amazing. I mean, we've gone far beyond Thunderball. People.
If you can afford to buy one, listeners, in 5 years' time, don't wait for the 5th generation.
Yeah.
Remember how buggy the iPhone 1 was. You don't want to be 200 feet in the air when that thing goes out from under you.
Yes, having it burst into flames or things is not a good idea. You don't want to wind up like poor old Neville. Oh, well, that's giving away a little bit too much for this.
Hello, spoiler alert. But I love the kind of sound consumer advice that comes up on this show. When you're jetpack shopping, don't go out and buy the first one you see. Yeah. Wait a little bit. Wait for the technology to mature.
Don't get the Walmart version.
No. And don't go with 0.0. Let them do a couple of builds after the new version comes out. So
right. Let a couple of updates. Exactly.
But a great minute, definitely a great minute here, and a great way to end our week. Ethan, thank you so much for being on the show. It's always a
thank you for having me on.
Really,
I'm apologies for talking over both of you sometimes. The delay slightly, I think. I apologize.
It's okay. You're on the other side of the planet from us at the moment, so it's we're just being, this is all the function of being part of the future. We're here.
And your other co-host, Billy Campbell, love your work, sir. Keep coming on this show. The episodes are great. We love you.
Wow. Well, we may. Ethan, we may have you on during a Billy-sode. I think we're going to. No,
oh my God!
So, well, then we have to combine Ethan's theme with Billy's theme, and that's going to get complicated.
We'll have to get Ethan a theme. That's
well, step one.
But please do. Is there a central location for the world of Ethan? Is there a place we can send people for their, the Walmart?
There's EthanMcKinley.com. There's Ethan McKinley UK on Twitter. You can find my podcast, Questionable EMC. If you type that in to YouTube, you can find me berating and tearing apart movies and interviewing various people. I'm kind of doing this like mishmash now of movie breakdowns and then interviewing various people from the industry. Kelly LeBrock, I'm trying to get on. We're just having trouble because she lives in the Midwest, I think, and doesn't have a decent enough internet connection and wants to do it over the phone. But
really?
It's trying to explain to her assistant what a podcast is, and that if we send her a Zencaster type link, it will work and she'll be fine. So we're in negotiations as we speak to speak to the woman in red.
Who was she married to? Was she married to Steven Seagal at one point?
Steven Seagal, yeah. That's what I want to talk to her about, really, because I know she was having this Paul No Punches biography coming out a couple of years ago.
Wow. And
it never happened. And I know I just want to talk about that book and get the dish the dirt on old Steven Seagal for starters.
I cannot wait for that episode.
Ethan, every one of your ventures is so exciting. I will definitely be tuning in, but please, yes, go check out Ethan's many works. The man, I don't know when he sleeps.
Oh, and I have one more thing to add, listeners. I do know a podcast called Was It Worth It? I'm sorry, I just forgot that. I've only just started, but I know a friend who's not seen any big genre films or franchise pictures, and he's 30 years old. So I make him watch a film like Alien, and then we discuss it for half an hour, and we find out if it was actually worth it with a modern perspective looking back on an old movie. So, we see if these films still hold up. So that's my new venture. I'll put a link to that under the show.
You're simultaneously molding and shaping his opinions about entire franchises, which is excellent. So very, very exciting times ahead. So everybody, there's no reason to have this weekend. We will not be producing anything this weekend, so please go check out all of Ethan's stuff. You can binge to your heart's content for the next 48 hours. Please do. But please join us back here Monday. Of course, we've got our own social media out there that you can touch upon. We've got Twitter, Rocketeer Minute. We've got Facebook, facebook.com/Rocketeer Minute. You can also join us at the big site, rocketeerminute.com. Lots of cool swag, previous episodes, future episodes maybe, and a bunch of different articles and pictures that you may have not seen anywhere else. So check us out, rocketeerminute.com. We will join you back here Monday and find out what a closed set means, as the director tells us. So be back here Monday for the Rocketeer Minute. So until next time, over and out.
Bye. Thanks, guys.
Go get him, kid.